I was asked here to talk about, give an update on what's happened in the salmon fishery, and it's not very good news, and I would hope that out of this conference we go forward with some sort of positive feelings and not spend a lot of time whining. One thing I wanted to get at, though, and this is an aside, but it happened a little bit earlier here today, was somebody was making reference to the term fisher. And I was correcting them. And I just want to explain to all of you before we go further in this and for the next 3 days, political correctness in the fishing industry. And a little story to tell here is that in about 1979, the Carter administration's Department of Labor came out with a directive on what people are to be called in various professions. And one of them for the fishing industry was for fishermen. It was to no longer be fishermen, but rather fishers. And I was getting ready to figure out, well, okay, we're going to have to change our stationery and get used to this new term which is foreign to me, frankly, because I'd grown up with the term fisherman. And the women in our industry, and God bless them, wrote a scathing letter to the Carter administration that also happened to get printed on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And they went to the dictionary. And I hope they do a better job than Justice Scalia. But in any event, they went there and they looked up the term fisher, and it's a weasel. Moreover, it's a weasel that doesn't even fish, and it's on the endangered species list. So they thought to themselves, well, you know, we really don't want to be referred to as a weasel. We don't want our husbands, our significant others, our brothers, our sons, our daughters, our fathers being referred to as weasels. And what right did this agency have naming us anyway? I mean, it's almost as insulting as when those 19th century anthropologists decided that they were going to, you know, call Asians, persons from Asia as Mongoloids, and Africans as Negroids. And of course, the rest of us who were pale in face were called Caucasoids. And it really didn't make much sense, and so they reacted rather angrily to that. And I think that the bigger issue they made of that, they said, if you really want to do something for women in the fishery, by God, pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Do something for us that means something. And I got to think about that, and I thought, well, you know, and that's right, because, you know, if you are going to do something that's substantive, that means something. And that's really what I hope that we're going to be able to get out of all this today and the next couple of days is come forward with I think, something substantive. And I'm pretty confident that can happen. But looking back at where we are on the fisheries and giving you a quick update of where we are, is that this year in our seasons, we were off about approximately 90% of our loss. So we had about a 90% loss in our fisheries on the West Coast in California. And this obviously is much higher than the losses that have been projected by the National Marine Fisheries Service, which tried to downplay the losses. But this is based on what we should have been harvesting as far as the abundance of the Sacramento Fall Run Chinook. And Scott Boley and Keith Wilkerson and others are here from Oregon, and I think their story is going to be pretty much the same, is that there were significant losses. In 2005, the losses were well over 50% losses in that. And for 2007, things are not looking much better. So it's been significant, and obviously we're not going to be able to sustain our fisheries along the coast. Our salmon fisheries have been there historically on the ocean for, this will be about 100 years now, since the advent of the motors in these vessels allow them to go in the ocean and fish. So it's significant, and it means that we really are going to have to do something. But again, I didn't come here to sit and whine. You can get that other places. I'm really looking forward to figuring out what we can do to fix this problem. And in looking at some of the things that we've been pushing ahead with now, and we're not the only ones, there's other fishing groups, and certainly the tribes have been very active as well, is that I think it helps to give a little bit of perspective here, because a lot of people think that this problem just happened recently, or when they sort of discovered that, and particularly for the people that are younger here, and I'm glad you're here because you're going to be the ones carrying on this work, is that I think some of the first attention looking at the Klamath goes back to the California California's Citizens Advisory Committee on Salmon and Steelhead Trout, and some of its first reports to the legislature around 1971, saying that, talking about the things that had to be fixed, and they specifically looked at the Trinity, but also looked at the Klamath. Indeed, if one really wants to go back, we can go back a century when the first proposals were made for making the Klamath Basin a Pacific Coast salmon refuge. That was done about, I think, 1896 or so, and then here we are in 2006, and reading that on the other side of the Pacific, they're discussing the same thing now for Kamchatka, that is, looking at a number of their river systems and trying to preserve those as a salmon sanctuary.